Evening. I'm Jody London, and you are?
I'm Art Zeidman, Regional Director of the Office for Civil Rights, U.S. Department of Education, San Francisco office.
Great. Welcome to the Oakland Unified School District. I just wanted to get a better understanding from you, and also for the public's benefit, of how you, I don't know how else to say, but how you chose Oakland to be a district with which you wanted to enter into, that you came to us with this offer for the voluntary resolution. I'm sure you have a lot of options when you see the kind of data for a district like Oakland, and I'm wondering if you could explain a little bit your thought process around that.
Certainly. Thank you, President London, Superintendent Smith, members of the board. The first issue is, in choosing a district for a compliance review, is to look all over the country. We have 12 regions of the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights, and many of the regions are proceeding with similar reviews across the country. This is not the first year we've done it. There are many in progress, but we look at national civil rights data that we collect through the Civil Rights Data Collection System, which your district and all districts around the country participate in. And then we start to look at things that stand out. And your presentation before pointed out some of the disparities which are apparent strictly by the numbers and statistics. In an investigation, we'll use that as a basis for looking at a district and determining whether there's something that can be done to correct the disparities, as well as the opportunities to really show the country that change is possible, the real change is possible. Back in the spring, we selected Oakland on that basis. A number of districts were possibilities, but this is one where we indeed had a history of cooperation, of cooperative work in the past, and we wanted to also come back and see where it stood today. Based on that, we contacted Superintendent Smith, and it was at the time of the Urban Strategies report, which bolstered the idea that there was work to be done in Oakland and that Oakland was willing to do it. And so in order to put our resources for our region into a project which could result in real change, we settled in on Oakland. And that faith that we had in Oakland was immediately repaid in great measure, because we had cooperation from the superintendent's office, from the staff, general counsel. Everybody got on board with the idea that this is an issue that had to be resolved in a positive way. So we spent the summer digging through statistics, interviewing administration, interviewing staff, and typically what we would do is then go on with a lengthy investigation and determine whether the district was in compliance with federal law or not. But right from the beginning, as I said, we had the cooperation of the district. There were ideas in place. There were very positive things happening. And so before concluding our investigation, long before, we started working on a plan, a resolution agreement, to put in place a timetable to make sure that we were satisfied that things would get done in a timely fashion. And we are satisfied with the timetable. These things were negotiated with the district and with the Office for Civil Rights. And that's how we got to where we are today. I would be unfair to the district to say that we did not fully investigate this case. We did not. The opportunity was there to find solutions rather than just to come in and say yes or no, you're in compliance with law or not. So this is very early in our investigative process, but everything that we've looked at, data, interviews, other material that we've put together has shown us that this is fertile ground for change.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That was the information I was looking for, and I don't have any further questions myself. Do other board members want to comment or ask questions? Director Yee.
I do. First of all, thank you very much for standing with us over these past weeks and months, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the resolution and your facilitation of it. I am curious, though, about one thing, as has been noted in the past. This is, I believe, the second or third voluntary resolution, and there have been reports for a number of years around the same types of topics. And I wonder if you've done any analysis about your assessment of the activities that were implemented by the district in the past.
Yes.
And specifically, I'm curious around three aspects. Did the district, were there actually successes that we can celebrate that are generally hidden beneath the outcomes that are, the evidence and outcomes that are presently presented as the assessment? Secondly, did we do some things wrong that we hope to do right in the future? Thirdly, did we do some things right, but we didn't do them, we did the right things, but we didn't do them well? And fourthly, were there other factors that existed beyond the scope of the voluntary resolution that led to the another voluntary resolution? So that's, I'd appreciate any public analysis that you could provide in those 5 areas.
Certainly. Thank you, Director Yee. The first thing I wanted to do, because Director Yee raised a very important point, we've been talking about the voluntary resolution plan and the VRP, and that language is, in fact, in this current agreement in many aspects. But the history of it was that at the time the last review of discipline in Oakland was raised, it was in the 1990s, and the standards that my office used, I wasn't with the office that time back then, but the standards that my office used then are different than what we're looking at now. There was not the same concern about looking at disparate impact, statistical studies. That was not a focus of the Office for Civil Rights, and in fact, up until about 3 years ago, the civil rights data collection system was rather primitive, and it didn't reveal a lot of the information we've looked at now. The original complaint, the review in Oakland last time was generated by a complaint about the subject, and so we went in and investigated. But coming out of it, we used a different approach than the district is using now. It was what I would say is a more conventional approach. This is a more innovative approach. So the standards for completing the agreement from the original voluntary resolution plan were much lower than these standards. There was less of a goal, so it was easier, I think, for the district to achieve goals. And in fact, in 2006, the formal resolution agreement, the voluntary resolution plan, was actually ended, and our monitoring of this issue in Oakland ended in 2006 and doesn't resume until and unless we have an agreement now. That's not to say that there weren't successes. There were successes to celebrate. My staff that was involved in monitoring Oakland's progress saw a lot of very significant efforts made to deal with disparate treatment in discipline with African American students. But the problem is that those successes, I think, were insufficient to get us where the district needs to go. So we did, in fact, celebrate them. We complimented the district. I had people coming to the district on a regular basis from, I believe it was 1999 until 2006. And they worked very well with people in the district, and there were a lot of things put in place. But as I said, the goals were not as high as these are, and the approach was not the same. Did you do some things wrong? I really hate to say that, because if that were the case, and undoubtedly as we went through it, we found some things that my office disagreed with, we worked with the district to correct those things, to make improvements, and we would not have left, agreed to terminate the monitoring of that agreement in 2006 if we weren't satisfied that those goals weren't achieved. So there may have been some things that were done wrong, but we worked together to correct them. And the flip side of the same question, do things right and not well? I think that's why we're here now. This is not a hostile relationship with the Oakland School District. We've always had an excellent working relationship, and your superintendent has really given us his word, his commitment that this is a real priority for him to resolve these issues to the extent anything can be resolved once and for all, to really make substantial progress on a higher level. So I don't know if that answers every aspect of your question.
Well, there's 2 points that are really important that you highlighted. One is the 2006 release from the voluntary resolution, right, which, you know, in all of the attention to the upcoming plan, I think I was really hoping to elicit from you that acknowledgement that work has been done.
Right.
And I appreciate that. And I guess the second is, just to cut to the chase, that I appreciate the thoughtfulness of your response, but if you were to come back in a year and maybe in 2 years, let's say, if you were to come back in 2 years, would you expect impact on the disparate disproportionality of suspension and discipline in those 2 years, or would you would you, from your global analysis of efforts like this, expect the implementation of steps? In other words, is the first year, is the first 2 years efforts to put in place the formative steps to address the disparities, or would you actually have the community, and you can help the community go think this thing through? If in the end of 1 year we don't see a 20% reduction in suspension, disproportionate suspension, is the plan in place and the resolution in place a failure? So what are the standards that you would suggest that the community use to evaluate and assess the district's effectiveness and its commitment in this partnership with you?
Well, there are two answers to that. The first one is very specific. What would I expect to see in a year? The first thing is to say that Oakland has already embarked on the steps that we recognize as necessary to see improvements in these areas. And I think that it would be unfair to say that this agreement is what caused Oakland to make that commitment. The Urban Strategies report was welcomed with open arms here, and you have consultants on board in restorative justice, PBIS. These are very positive developments, and there are numerous aspects, but you have already begun to undertake efforts as a district to deal with this problem. So that's the first point. In the space of a year, and we do have this agreement phase, there are phases to it. The first phase involves a lot of preparation work, but it also involves action. It's not to sit still to spend a year thinking about what needs to be done and then start putting into place, because one of the things that the superintendent recognized is that students only get one chance per year to get through that year. And if you take too long to develop something, to think about it without actually putting something into place, even if it's partially in place, you're not being fair with those students. We do not have specific measures that suspensions have to be reduced by X% or Y%, but we certainly will be looking at the data as it comes in. One of the things that's very difficult is Oakland is right on the cutting edge, and so we don't know for certain whether concepts of restorative justice will result in a 2% change, 50% change, 80% change. And so we avoided going from the earlier agreement, which had very low goals, to a new agreement which you might be in violation of right off the bat or soon thereafter without the ability for us to work together. The next few years will be an effort of my office and your district to work together to see what the trends are and to identify the successes and the failures and try to bring all the failures up to success without a gotcha. For example, if you don't change the results by X%, then the deal's off. That would be unfair to the district and unrealistic on our part.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Student directors, did you have any questions? No, okay. Vice President Hinton-Hodge.
Great questions, Director Yee. I like to go after him. Not to build off of. So thanks for the work. There are a number of people in the audience that probably shouldn't and can't name all of you, but thanks for actually being on this journey with us for the last couple of years to move this work around, in particular the African American Male Achievement Initiative. I am excited. The pieces that I want to raise up are to think about this work, and I've been talking to some folks around policy things, and I can only think about this resolution order. It seems to just kind of consume me when I think about it as a lens to the work that we do. So I am asking for staff to really, again, lift up this work and think about what is going to be in service of decreasing these suspension rates, right? How do we get away from that? And that question should be asked in the Ombudsman's office. That question should be asked across HR. That question needs to seriously be asked in our family engagement community office. And I've been pushing on the students from the moment I met you all, right? In the first 5 minutes of meeting you. What does this mean in terms of all city council? How are you going to begin to support and address some of these outcomes and these things that we're looking for and doing? So to think about this, again, across all of our departments, I think is very critical. To also piggyback on Director Spearman's piece around administration. I want to note the amazing work that happened at Cole Middle School. And I had, again, the honor and privilege to do work in community before ever sitting over here. And that work at Cole Middle School, while we went in and we were going to change things for young people, it clearly became changing things for the adults in the room. And it clearly meant that teachers and principals, I think Barb McClung spoke to it, that, you know, in Miss Rashid's class, you could wear your hat. But in Mr. Brown's class, you didn't play that, especially if y'all know Cole. For real, Mr. Brown didn't play that. So, but the idea that then these teachers weren't necessarily communicating and talking about their own process or their own discipline process and practice. And that after about a year, it became amazing learning after people actually sat down in circles together and got to share. We saw that actually teachers were retained. Folks didn't feel like they had to get out. New teachers actually felt a sense of support through the restorative justice model. So I want to, again, while we're thinking about it in terms of the relationship building for young people, it's an opportunity actually for adults to get in right relationship with one another as well. And to that end, I want to suggest that any model, and I'm a restorative justice biased person, I don't really know that much about PBIS. So when we start talking about an advisory type group that I think should be across many different stakeholders, from parents to advocates to our faith-based community to administrators to teachers to principals to students to really monitor and watch this, I would actually like to suggest that we do that not in our traditional poor practice of holding meetings, but to actually do that work in circle, to do that work in a restorative way, because I think, again, we often bring a lot of just our stuff, right, into the room. And I've been thinking also a lot about this African proverb that I heard recently about the elephants fighting with one another and being so strong and again, being in conflict with one another, but that in fact, no matter who wins in that, the grass is what gets trampled. And in this situation, they were speaking to adults in school systems, unions and teachers and administrations fighting with one another, the big elephants, the powerful ones, and who gets trampled in that is young people. So I would like to see us really practice this. Again, I'm going to really emphasize for the adults to be in that space and doing that. And then the next piece, and again, this is with Director Spearman and I's work and Director Noel Gallo's work on the Student Safety Committee, and we look at DHP cases. And so I think that there where we see many children of color coming before us that are either we're deciding on them being in the system or outside of our system, to think about how to track and pay attention to those students. Because I think we often leave those meetings on Tuesday going, good luck, hope you make it back through. Is this cycle going to repeat itself? So just in general, I'd like to see that. And the very, very last thing would be from Brother Mateen. I'm going to lift him up around professional development, having to be really a central piece in our conversations around this. I mean, it's in here, but can we get to dig deeply around what that really looks like? Because we can have all kinds of practices we want, but if the teachers and the principals are not really on board, it's not going to really matter much.
Thank you. So I think at this point, thank you very much for your time and your interest. Yes.
Two more things. I think for discussion for the public, also from the Office of Civil Rights, what is the consequences to the district in case we're not compliant? And could you also kind of describe to us, if in fact we have it, what the monitoring process would be from the Office of Civil Rights? I really appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Director Spearman, the question, what are the consequences if the agreement isn't carried out the way the Office of Civil Rights expects? And it would be quite extraordinary to reach that point, I would like to start off by saying, because the entire agreement anticipates our continued involvement with the district rather than just sort of sitting back and saying, okay, we got you here, we got you here. If we see things that early on are not moving in the right direction in terms of adherence to the terms of the agreement, we would be in touch with the superintendent's office immediately and have discussions about that, hoping to avoid having any problem with it, and I expect that we'll be able to resolve anything like that. But if we did reach the point where the Office for Civil Rights determined that the agreement was not being adhered to in a substantial way, we would then, and that we couldn't resolve those differences. And again, all of these things would be an extreme case. We would open the investigation or reopen the investigation and then determine whether or not the Oakland Unified School District is in compliance with the law. Everything we had done before would go into that mix, but we would take a fresh look at the district and then determine whether there was compliance or non-compliance. If there were non-compliance, then there's an administrative procedure where the agency can move to suspend federal funds. But these are things that we don't come into this process looking to get to that point. Our goal is not to save the money that the district receives from the federal government. On the contrary, it's to make sure that it's working along with the district to achieve justice. You asked about monitoring, and I have 2 attorneys on staff who will be assigned, amongst their other duties, to be in constant contact with the district, both on a regular basis where we inquire how things are going on and look at statistics, as well as any problems arise, as they inevitably will, which we'll use to resolve. We have many, many cases. This is not the only case. My region covers the entire state of California, both K-12 and colleges and universities. So this is not the only case that we handle, but it's a major and substantial case, and we certainly will devote the resources to avoid the consequences that I've just outlined.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Zeidman, very much.